Welcome back, everyone, to another episode in the React series. My name is Ben Cardle, and if this is your first time to the channel, let me introduce myself. I am the author of the best-selling book, The Monographs, which is a study on the real-world application of the skill set of Sherlock Holmes, and we apply that through opening up videos and discussion on topics from reading people, deduction skills, memory techniques, right the way through to how to effectively get to the truth of any given situation. We've got a real challenging topic for you today, because this guy is billed as the quintessential psychopath. As always with this series, this bit is the first time I'm watching any footage from them. They are just clip shows that we do here from the actual episode. If we were to break down the actual episodes of some of the stuff here, it would be like 3 and 4 hour clips, and no one would ever watch them. So if this is something that sounds like it's up your street, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that 21st century stuff. And with that in mind, let's get to it.
I'm about to interview a murderer.
Just to tell you right from the get-go, Piers Morgan is not the psychopath that we're looking at in this video.
Like any I've faced before. Psychopaths may seem like us, but I want to find out how their minds really work.
Well, you're not going to do that from a single interview, Piers.
All right, let me go down there and get this to him, and we'll start the clock on you when he comes and sits down. Paris, here we go. Come on over here, buddy.
Paris Bennett is a diagnosed psychopath, and with an IQ of 141.
141. That appears to be a sort of common misconception, in my opinion, that all psychopaths are geniuses, because you have to be that way inclined to function at that level, when that's not true. If you look at some of the studies on the work, all psychopaths aren't killers, all killers aren't psychopaths, right? If you look at some of the famous geniuses, you've got in terms of IQ points, you've got Elon Musk, who was 165, Zuckerberg was 152, Bill Gates 160, Stephen Hawking 169, Nikola Tesla was 189, Tarantino 163, and this guy I wrote down as well, because he's got the same, well, the same score as me when I was tested, 143. And there's a lot to be said for IQ tests as well. Many psychologists and psychiatrists would disagree on the most effective way to test this. Depending upon the scale that you're using, some people rank them in terms of margins. So from this number to this number, that's where his IQ sits. Yeah, so it all depends on your opinion of it, but it boils down to your assessment of reasoning, problem solving, pattern exploitation and recognition, storage and retrieval of information, which that's where I scored most highly on. But I don't personally believe that's anything to do with IQ. That's more to do with the memory techniques that I've developed over the years. So yeah, what this guy's being billed as is somebody who is that smart, that intelligent, like a chess player. They will be trying to outwit you, outsmart you, play you at their own game, because their intelligence puts them above you. So they're able to see the patterns that you're trying to employ, and therefore able to counter them in order to move on with their own battle plan, so to speak. So this guy's moving with pride. He'll speak quite eloquently. as his intelligence and his cadence and his movement would dictate. Upright, shoulders back, head up, chin up. That's not pride at this moment, that's confidence, which works in line with most psychopathy traits, right? But we're a few seconds in. let's have a further look.
He's considered a genius.
So you're going to be talking to Pierce Morgan? Okay. Hello, everyone. Paris,
How are you doing?
good to see you. Thank you for agreeing to do this. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
To help us better understand Paris, I've called upon two of America's leading experts. Dr. Casey Jordan is a specialist in criminal behaviour. Mark Safrick has...
If you want an awareness of being able to look at somebody and go, psychopath, it's got to be your job, right? Because with something that is nowadays being more and more considered, you know, a spectrum, more so than anything, you need people to be able to recognize and diagnose the traits, who spend their lives looking at it. Because if you're going to be labeled a psychopath, it's got to be done with the right amount of legwork and education to support it, right? People like you and I, who have a knack for reading a person, might be able to intimate and infer psychopathy or psychopathic tendencies, but for it to be as categorical as this, you need the intense educative history that your job title would give you. So you need people like these to support you, not like Piers says, understand how their minds really work after what I'm presuming is an episode.
has over 20 years at the FBI, profiling violent criminals.
I mean, he's going to try and play me, isn't he?
Of course.
He's going to think he's smarter than me. Because for him, it's a game. And he's got an hour to get over on you. And he's smart enough to try to do it. And he's narcissistic enough to think that he's smarter than you.
Well, he is. Let's face it, for a start, 141. So, at this stage, what do we know about him? You're welcome. He will speak with courtesy, narcissism, intelligence, diagnosed psychopathy. So that'll come with looking at this guy as well and how he moves. I would argue narcissism would be a discount way of describing him. It would be virtually Machiavellian in the way he would be. So if that chap is insinuating that he's going to be playing him at his end game, playing him at his own game, I'm getting end game too much with the chess now already. So he must be getting out soon then, or something. Going to try and push forward the opinion of himself, talk about who he is now. That's what we're trying to do in terms of outthinking his original plan.
And he's researched you, I guarantee it. And he is sizing you up faster than you're sizing him up.
Thank you very much.
Must have been another cut.
Since this is going to be done for ITV, would you like me to speak in Queen's English?
Oh, there it is. That's a terrible place for you, Paris, for me to start. That's just a pause. So yeah, that's the Machiavellian stuff right there. The egocentrism. If you look at his displays in terms of where it went back to oops. I went too far. There. If you look at that, you know, this would be a chance to see someone's emotional spectrum, right? And their awareness of how they are displaying certain features to the world, right? So the same can be said for our display patterns in terms of our awareness of the emotional state that we feel at any given moment. If I am talking about how elated I feel and how overjoyed, excited, but I'm talking to you like this, and I'm genuinely trying to convey that I don't have people involved in gunfire, the fireworks are still going. So if I'm talking to you with this tone, this manner, this reflection on my face, it doesn't match with my words, right? It doesn't fit. So either one of two things is happening. Either my awareness of my felt state is wrong, or I don't know what it is to feel that, which is 9 times out of 10 the way psychopaths tend to behave, because they are aware that these feelings exist, but they don't have the ability to possess them themselves, hence the mimicry that is seen.
Since this is going to be done for ITV, would you like me to speak in Queen's English?
And ITV, since this will be done for ITV, would you like me to speak in Queen's English? So one of two things. Either he is aware that ITV is a British channel, which shows how engaged he is in terms of awareness and research that he would have done before, like Piers was already informed on, or somebody's told him ahead of time. Right? It seems like a misnomer that you are being interviewed by an English person, therefore it's an English channel. That would be more befitting of his research that he's done. So we can start to allay any fears that we might have regarding what kind of a game he's playing, because he is showing his hand already. That's what an elevated sense of intelligence with egocentricity will do.
I suppose my first question for you is, why are you doing this interview? What do you hope to get out of this?
Great question.
I believe that the most important goal for me is to show people that I may be incarcerated, but that does not necessarily mean that I am a monster or a villain. That...
There you go. We called it, right? He's trying to change perception of himself. So, yeah, I mean, much like the video with Chris Watts, we know the outcome. Paris was a child killer, so he's been incarcerated for a number of years now at the minute. So the fear is going to be when he reaches a certain age, he can still get out, right? The awareness of his disorder will either keep him in or it won't. So he's got to display that it's not there, it's under control, something like that. But if you look as well, the first question was designed to be quite incendiary. Why are you doing this? As if he has no reason to, so there must be something he's trying to convey. It's designed to have quite an emotional response. Nothing, which could happen in terms of a great deal of preparation. So his intelligence could have prepared him for the awareness of that kind of question, so that when it popped up, you were emotionally capable of dealing with it. Or psychopath, or both, I guess, really. Either way, you can see the levels of control that young Paris has. So there's a slight increase in his internals, right? When we're dealing with the quintessential psychopath, you can expect whatever leak we're going to see is extremely minute. So we're looking more at the increased blink rate. Right? The increased blink rate. As I've described it before, it's more of a visual link to somebody's pulse, right? When their pulse changes, it flutters. When it slows down, the speed comes down with it. When we get anxious and afraid, our body follows suit, right? But with somebody who is controlled is the wrong word, because he doesn't have the capability to inhibit those emotional states, being a psychopath, right? So the eyelid flutter and the increased blink rate is where we can start to see for confirmation later where this, because this is a single observation. A plus B doesn't equal C here, right? Even more so with somebody of Paris's intellect. This is just something for us to factor in later on to confirm or deny.
Just for other people through the years, because no one likes to be confused. No one likes to be bewildered. We like easy answers.
Slight leak of anger, easy answers.
From what I've read, you were weighing up various options. One was to potentially kill the babysitter. One was to kill your mother, with whom you had lots of anger towards.
So that might have been something as well, that he was legitimately thinking of killing his mother. Because there was nothing on the babysitter remark. Freud would have had a field day with this guy then. But yeah, again, question, designed, incendiary response. And confronted it straight on. Minor leak in his internals. Minor. With the slight increase in blink rate. But again, no deceptive leaks. Tackled it straight on. I would imagine, from how he's talking about it so far, this hot ball of wrath in the pit of his stomach. It might be the way psychopaths feel in this particular moment, but this seems to be like a fractionation response when you use distancing language to separate yourself from a particular issue or concern. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, that ball pit, out of his control then, right? He's a victim.
And
Hey, I'm going to make a guess. He's going to say no. He's going to say no. He doesn't remember it. If you're talking about the boiling fire pit of wrath in the pit of your stomach, the greatest way to sort of remove yourself from that scenario would be to claim a fugue state, right?
I remember impressions more than I do vivid memories. It's not
Okay.
It's not like there's a film in my head that I can just play whenever I want to. That's really all I can say about it. There are parts that are very, very clear, and there are parts that are hard to remember.
He has an amazing memory.
Well, your mother would know that. Minor lip compression in the end, which is again, it's traditionally linked in part of the textbook responses to reading body language, to withheld opinions, which might formulate in part of controlled responses from a deeply intellectual and psychopathic individual. I can only tell you from context in terms of, I have a good memory, but mine's trained. Whether his is innate or trained or not, I don't know. But with particularly emotionally charged scenarios, right? Even if you don't have a charged memory, with a trained memory, even with particularly emotionally charged scenarios, that sticks out like a sore thumb if you are of a clear mind, right? So I would fully call bullshit on that one. Mr. Paris, feels like we are getting more of an insight into the game he's trying to play, right? In terms of psychopathy, my illness, my affliction is over here. I am over here. I am no longer associated with this, or I have control over this. I am okay to be let go, whenever that is.
When it comes to a lot of other things. But when you start to ask, because I've asked, like, where did all this start? That's when he starts getting vague.
Well, that's a different question. That's a different question. Where did all this start? That is perhaps more forgivable when you've had... Forgivable's the wrong word to use in that type of scenario. Understandable in terms of not being able to recall the exact moment when you've been thinking about something rage-fueled for that long. Tracing back the exact spark can be a challenge, right? If you've ever argued with someone for that long, you get to the point where you really don't know what started it or what you were arguing about in the first place. This is that same level of rage, just way off the scale. So in terms of what happened that night, in terms of what's starting this, they're very different questions.
What point in that day had you decided you were going to kill somebody?
It wasn't like I was crafting a plan to rob a bank where I knew that at this time I'm going to do this, and then at this other time I'm going to do the other thing. I think that a deeper, darker part of...
Kind of makes me curious, just from a side note, why they're superimposing the interview of Paris on the little mini TV screens that the FBI guys are watching through. But yeah, he's still very controlled in his responses. The lip compression is, again, it's a sign of preparation. He knew the question was coming. He is able to seemingly so freely give all of these metaphorical responses to place you in that same kind of scenario. Right? It's not like I was thinking of robbing a bank where I would do this or this or this. You can understand that, right? Hypnotists use this type of thing all the time, this type of language pattern where they speak in metaphors. Cold readers are another one where you find your own meaning and your own reasoning to make it fit you. Same with his metaphors. It's not like I was planning on robbing a bank. Somebody's thought about that at some point. You know, even if it was for a joke, it's a thought pattern that you can understand. Very smart ploy in terms of persuasive angles to take. But again, I guess that's why he's locked up for being a genius psychopath, right?
Me, a part that doesn't express itself in articulate words. I think
eloquence
it knew
again.
What it was going to do, and I understand that I'm completely depersonalizing a part of my own mind right now. But I think
Boom. And there we go, he just said it himself. That type of fractionation response that hypnotists use. He's verbally separating himself from this affliction that he believes himself to be subject to. His intellect is coming out in his verbal displays again. But that's another one of the tick charts on part of the I think it was in the early 70s. Robert O'Hare, something like that. Anyway, I imagine quick Google search, it'll help you out as well. But there was a checkpoint in terms of like 20 or 30 different checkpoints for psychopathy and narcissism, pathological lies, manipulation, remorse or empathy, lack of emotional understanding, this small range of emotional displays that you are able to do or able to feel, false displays, Prison as well might lend itself to an open exploration of promiscuity, but that's nothing more than a guess based upon the stereotype of the prison system.
Stood in an intuitive way that I was going to do something. I was caught up in a current, and I was just being swept along.
He said it wasn't like I was creating a...
He's about to give his understanding. Those guys are great. I'll keep saying it. They're the people that you need to have supporting you in this type of environment if you're going to go and interview somebody like this without the right background, right? Yeah. But if you look at his forehead, his eyebrows, again, I've said it before, in terms of emotional resonance, there is none. These don't move. This doesn't move. There's no action. There's no displays. And you would think, for at least being 25 now, going through life, experiencing all manner of different scenes or scenarios, 13 years in prison for the murder of your little sister, is going to attract a lot of attention to you. And you talk about the different herd dynamics in terms of power plays and hierarchical angles that can be used. He would be involved in a lot of charged scenarios, but there's nothing there. There's nothing on his forehead. There's nothing in his eyebrows. There's nothing in his skin to show that he's used to displaying any kind of deeply felt state without the type of control that Botox would maybe give you. That's not really control, that's paralysis, but you get what I'm meaning.
Plan to rob a bank, except that's exactly what he did. He had a plan. He had been planning for a long period of time.
Okay, there you go, see?
The babysitter didn't just leave. He coerced the babysitter to leave because he needed the babysitter gone in order to put his plan into action.
It was Super Bowl Sunday. He knew his mother had to work late. He knew he would be alone with his little sister if he could get rid of the babysitter.
There was always a plan.
Yeah.
You have an IQ of 141, which is pretty well genius level. That would make you an exception.
Did you see that? That control of the smile, the pride, the ego. It's just in his lips again here, right? Watch that one. I think it was around the genius statement.
There's always a plan.
Yeah.
You have an IQ of 141, which is pretty well genius level.
There.
That would make you an exceptional intellect for people who are normally in prison. One of the things most people...
Inhibited smile, pride. So he takes great pride in being seen as smarter than other people, or being smarter than other people. Now, if you're looking to persuade the persuader, that's you're in.
Say, when they serve a lot of time, is just how boring and repetitive, mundane the life is. How do you deal with that?
It just reminds me of a Sherlock Holmes quote. I abhor the dull routine of existence, or words to that effect, the mundanity. Just reminded me there. I'll find it and I'll put it up on screen. Most people tend to think I've got the entire canon stored in my head. By now I don't. But yeah, that was just. I thought it was funny. Perhaps in context, not that funny.
I am a voracious reader. I'm always reading.
Sherlock has described himself as a voracious reader, an omnivorous reader as well. Maybe I should rethink my idols right now.
And
What are you reading at the moment?
well, I'm reading several things at the moment right now.
Boom! I'm reading several things at the moment. There's the ego, there's the response, and these guys know it too. There's your in. If you wanna play this guy in terms of eliciting him to give you information that you believe he's got, that you perhaps hadn't gotten him to talk about before, you appeal to his intelligence.
Read a horror story.
I get that, right? In terms of, let's just wait for the fireworks to stop. In terms of the mundane, that's uninteresting to somebody of his character. He needs to be charged. It's like the way drug dealers and drug takers can overdose. Taking it the same thing for so long, you need more to achieve that same high, right? So he needs more descriptions, more metaphors, more of a visceral type of reality for him to enjoy and hear. It is concerning that he gets that through horror and dark fiction, because that's obviously going to indulge innate or, you know, developed tendencies. But yeah, I get mine from action films. I get my kicks to action films. Or Sharknado. I love that series. It's terrible. A terrible series of films, but I absolutely love it.
Where it's almost soothing in a way, because I find myself, it's almost like I'm touching the mind of the writer, someone who understands.
That's why it's concerning with it being soothing, because he's finding the fix within the same realm, right? So if you look at behavioural change as an example, when you're looking at helping somebody quit smoking, you look at behaviours that aren't inextricably linked towards hand-to-mouth actions, right? You find the root cause of what they get out of smoking, and then find them a different way of achieving that doesn't involve this. That's why a lot of people who give up smoking worry about putting on weight, because they're still doing this action, hand to mouth, hand to mouth, hand to mouth, but it's just without cigarettes. So that's why it's concerning here, at least in my opinion, of him still achieving that same sort of kick or fix within that same arena. That's not really addressing the issue in terms of behavioral change.
You can deeply love somebody that you've never even met. And when somebody said...
What happened there? That's a change. I'm going to assume that was a cut, because that's a completely separate. In any kind of response in the eyebrows there. So yeah, that's the way in. Again, sorry, that's another way in that you can use. He felt that ridiculous, but it might be that that's ridiculous as that's unintelligible as a response. I was trying to think of the best word. That the actual accusation of that is so uninspired that it offends him. You could argue that would be the case. It could just be that he finds it genuinely ridiculous. Could be because it doesn't work in line with his plan of separating himself from his affliction, all of which are equally concerning and equally back up the diagnosis. Now that's pretty cool as a response from Piers there. He's doing the same thing that Paris was trying to do earlier. You're a smart guy, you know that's the response, really. Right? That's a really, really smart play. Unless Paris has got an equally or smarter response, he's going to have to either agree or admit himself lesser. But he won't have liked being interrupted when he was about to speak, and Piers kept speaking.
Every single person walking around has it in him or her to commit murder in the right circumstances. Margaret Atwood once wrote that if we were all on trial for our thoughts, we would all be hanged.
Margaret Atwood. Alias Grace? I think that was. Yeah. But again, that's kind of a politician's response, because he's not actually answered the question. He's, I suppose that's serve returned if you're using a tennis response, because he's reframed the dynamic in terms of placing you back in that understanding, right?
And I want to remind people that there is more to me than a mistake that I made 13 years ago.
It's not a mistake.
Paris, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
I was serious when I told you that I refused to ever do something like this again. I was serious when I told you that that mistake doesn't define me.
I get that. I mean, it's just...
Trying to get those last few minutes of I'm not this anymore, I'm separated. That's his end game from the start. Confirmed that he's researched, confirmed that his attempts are there to manipulate. We've seen his emotional range. I would, not that my 2 pence is anything to go with, but I completely agree with this guy being the quintessential psychopath.
Is the scariest thing for you actually not being able to be 100% certain that you can control yourself?
I think the most distressing emotion I've ever felt in my life is powerlessness. And interviews like this are a way for me to
manipulate others. But powerlessness is something that if you are highly intellectual, highly egocentric, that's going to be your deepest fear. In terms of a quick assessment of quickly understanding somebody's fears, you look at what they take pride in, and for the exact opposite, right? So in terms of me, I take great pride in Sherlock being this genius person that had so far-reaching a narrative influence that he started forensic science pretty much. When you look at the work of Edmund Locard, if some of that came out to not be true, that detracts away from some of the influence that he's had and would be a fear of mine. Same could be said of anybody. You look at a particular scenario, if somebody is enjoying being the center of attention, talking about how much they paid for the new iPhone 12, and everyone's, wow, how can you afford that? It's so great, so cool gadgets. And then you showed up with a better or different gadget, or completely uninterested. That would detract from them. That would be a social fear in that scenario. So if you look reflexively at those, that's how you can start to attack certain persuasive techniques within this, right? Quick thing for you to think about there. Not so far out of the remit of control of Paris here.
Gain a sense of power over myself through self-knowledge.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Paris.
Psychopathy can't be cured. He cannot change. He can be managed.
And I guess that's the end of the video. But again, it can't be cured. Just nowadays, it's more considered a spectrum. I believe antisocial personality disorder was the initial change in thinking. It was a case of things like we've all heard of sociopath, psychopath. That's very much like you know, let me try and think how to say this. Not all fingers are thumbs, but all thumbs are fingers, right? They're both part of the same unit. It's just that sociopathy as an entity was widely more considered to be with social inhibitions in that regard. That's why people did work into the links of autism and the autistic spectrum there. There was some work in, oh, now you're testing me, 2013, Lockwood, I think was the name. And then again in 2019, Richmond, I think was the other name there. But again, quick Google search will probably tell you that about the reasoning of antisocial personality disorder as a spectrum of awareness is as opposed to the strictures of the 70s when psychopathy was a boxed off diagnosis. But there you go, guys. If you enjoyed that video about the awareness of psychopaths and spotting traits regarding them and the consistent equation response to reading their body language and their tells, then drop a like, drop a comment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're up for more of this. We go right the way through. And don't forget podcast episodes on Fridays as well. You can get that everywhere. And as always, guys, make smart decisions for those around you. Hope everyone's keeping safe out there. And don't be strangers. Talk to you all soon.